afternoon, and thank you for joining with us today. We're on sacred and hallowed ground. We're in front of the Municipal building in Brooklyn, New York, USA, which will soon be renamed after our honorable and esteemed Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I am the Brooklyn Borough President's deputy, Chaplain Ingrid P. Lewis Martin, and I stand here with our president and a group of other community leaders to call on our partners in federal government to do what is right and what is just by a woman of integrity who served for 27 years our Supreme Court Justice. She fought diligently and faithfully for those who were faced with injustices. She was noted as a women's rights advocate, but that was just a small portion of her story. She never asked for anything in return. She gave of herself freely. The one thing she did ask, which some viewed as her dying decree, was for her replacement to be selected by whoever is elected as president of our country in this upcoming election. It's a small thing to ask, a small modicum of respect to be given to a woman who fought valiantly and diligently for so many. So we have a number of people here who will explain why it is important to honor her one last wish. Our first speaker will be our esteemed and honorable Assembly member representing this district and others, Assemblymember Joanne Simon, followed by the Executive Director of Common Core's Susan Lerner. So I'll ask those two ladies to please come forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Borough President. I want to thank also Borough President Eric Adams for inviting us here today to speak about these issues. You know, we were here not that long ago having a rally in honor of Justice Ginsburg because we wanted to name the Municipal building after her. That we know will now happen, and that is a fitting honor. And I want to thank everybody who supported that, and the Borough President whose idea it was a while ago.
Yes.
If I recall. But I also want to talk to the very, very real concerns that moving forward with a Supreme Court nomination at this time means for all Americans. You know, it was Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's dying wish that her replacement not be put on the bench until after the next president takes over and is inaugurated. Now, if the current president is reelected, then we know who he will be putting on this bench. But if it is not this president who is reelected, and we have a President Biden, he should be able to make that decision. He should be accorded the respect and the deference that every other president in our history has been accorded. The reality is the American people are already voting. We have had over 6 million votes cast in this country already because of early voting. And early voting serves one major purpose. It allows people to vote. It makes it easier for people to vote. People sometimes don't vote because they can't get to the polls. Early voting changes that and allows more people to vote. It makes voting something that is accessible to Americans who have that right. So number one, people are already voting and expressing that interest, and we're not going to know what that is until after Election Day. But we should wait. There is no virtue in rushing this decision. We need to wait, we need to see who will be president, and we need to move accordingly. But I also want to talk about what Justice Bader Ginsburg stood for, which, as the previous speaker mentioned, was not just women's rights. The reality is that women's rights are human rights, and human rights are women's rights. I'm not the first person to say that. We all know who said that first. Not taking over any thunder here, but the reality is it's true. So it is about workers' rights. It is about health rights. It is about voting rights. It is about economic rights. It is about small businesses. It is about everything. It is about the ability for us to raise our children, to educate them, to open a business, to take out a loan, to get a credit card. It is about everything. And the reality is, if we have an extreme right-wing justice on the court, we are in danger of losing everything that Ruth Bader Ginsburg fought for and everything that others have fought for on the bench. There will be a voting rights case decided very soon. There will be the Affordable Care Act that is going to be a major decision on. And we could lose our health insurance, and the current nominee has already indicated she would get rid of the Affordable Care Act. That will leave millions and millions and millions of Americans, men, women, children, all races, all creeds, just people will be without health insurance. And we can't allow that to happen. What we have to do is get out and vote in numbers that we've never voted before. Our lives depend on our vote. It has never been more clear and more stark a decision. Our lives depend on getting out and voting. And so I encourage everybody to vote. Like never before, we need to make sure that there is no question about this election. And very clearly stated by the president is that he wanted to put somebody on the court right away because he thinks it will go to the court. So we know he's planning on challenging the results. And the only way to keep those results from being challenged is to ensure that we have a massive turnout everywhere. And so I will leave you with that message. Get out and vote. Make sure your friends and neighbors get out and vote, and call your friends and neighbors in other states, in states that may not be as clear in terms of their voting patterns as New York. Everybody needs to vote. And before you vote, or if you're voting early, do it at the same time, fill out the census, 2020census.gov. Thank you.
Thank you to the Borough President and to the Deputy Borough President for inviting me here today, and greetings to everybody. I'm here in my Empower People 2020 cowl because that is what Ruth Bader Ginsburg spent her life doing, empowering people. And what we are seeing right now in this hellacious rush to jam a Supreme Court nominee through the process is exactly the opposite of what Justice Ginsburg stood for. Almost every day now in the past week, there are revelations about the current nominee, things coming up that are not part of any of the disclosures that she made, speeches that she hasn't revealed, ads that she signed on to that she has not included in her disclosures, and that's what's wrong with a rushed process. It's illegitimate, it's immoral, and it's just wrong. It damages the Supreme Court, one of the few remaining institutions which has some credibility with the American people. So it's extremely important that we raise our voices and make it clear that this is not acceptable to us. I was very pleased this morning to hear Senator Schumer say that he was going to use every tool available to delay this nomination until after the inauguration. Very, very pleased to hear him talk the talk. Now we're going to watch and be sure that he walks the walk. And he needs to know how strongly we feel that this is simply wrong and destructive of our system. No confirmation before the inauguration. And don't get confused. If you hear about court packing, the people who are making accusations about court packing are the people who practice it. 3 district court nominations circuit court nominations to the DC Circuit by President Obama, blocked by a Republican Senate. A Supreme Court nomination by President Obama, blocked. Why? To keep open seats so that far right-wing justices and judges could be packed into our courts. Our courts need to be independent. We need to know that they are balanced, and that's why this current rush to an illegitimate confirmation must be resisted. Thank you.
Our next two speakers will be the President of the Lambda Independent Democrats of Brooklyn, Jared Irada, followed by the Executive Vice President of Brooklyn Young Dems, Julia Elmaleh Sachs. In that order, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Borough President. Thank you, Madam Borough President, Madam Deputy Borough President. Jared Irada, President, Lambda Independent Democrats of Brooklyn, Brooklyn's only LGBTQ Democratic club. I want to align myself with the three amazing women that came before me, and to add that LGBTQ rights are on the chopping block in this nomination. It's not just the rights of predominantly gay men to get married that we've had throughout many states and in the Obergefell decision from a couple years ago. It's the rights of an elderly LGBTQ woman to inherit her longtime partner's estate coming from the Windsor decision. It's the rights from recent decisions of transgender students to use the restrooms in their school that align with their gender. It's a whole cornucopia of rights that LGBTQ people that have come before me have fought for years, going back to the Stonewall riots and before that. So this illegitimate, as it's been called, appointment, so close to an election, so close to when people have already started voting, puts many, many, many rights on the chopping block. I'm only here to talk about a small, narrow sliver of those rights: women's rights, voting rights, whole cornucopia of rights, LGBTQ rights, all on the chopping block. We call on Senator Schumer. As it was said before, we call on Senator Schumer to do everything in his power. The Senate has a lot of arcane and crazy rules. To do everything in his power to block this nomination, hold it until the next election, until Joe Biden can appoint the next U.S. Supreme Court Justice. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Julia Elmaleh Sachs, the Executive Vice President of Brooklyn Young Democrats, which is one of the only county-wide clubs. We're also joined here today by our president, Christina Doss, who just took the bar exam this very week. I'd like to start with a quote that I'm sure many of you have heard over the last few weeks. Dissents speak to a future age. It's not simply to say, my colleagues are wrong and I would do it this way. But the greatest dissents do become court opinions, and gradually, over time, their views become the dominant view. So that's the dissenters' hope, that they are writing not for today, but for tomorrow. As the future of the Democratic Party, in Brooklyn and beyond, the Brooklyn Young Democrats are committed to doing all that we can to ensure that we win this election and uphold democracy. Even though each day seems to come with worse and worse news, Justice Ginsburg held on throughout numerous difficult moments in her life and fought for others when she seemed to be the only person in the room who cared. We too must continue this work and press on for justice and for the welfare of generations to come. The law of this land, as well as this project of democracy, are both ongoing. Neither are complete nor perfect, and both require our time and dedication to meet the needs of a changing society. Thus, if we want to leave the country in a better place than we found it in, we need everyone to do their part. Over the last few weeks, our Brooklyn Young Dem members have gotten on the phones for Congressman Max Rose, State Senator Andrew Gennardis, Sarah Gideon, and this Tuesday we'll be calling voters in swing states for Vice President Biden. A lot of us are also planning to help protect voters and the democratic process on and before Election Day, as Christina and I will be doing in Ohio. Disenfranchisement at the polls was an issue that Justice Ginsburg was acutely aware of. In 2013, she wrote a scathing dissent in Shelby County v. Holder, outlining the ways in which the Voting Rights Act was a levee keeping a whole host of issues at bay. As many of you have likely heard, she analogized the Supreme Court's evisceration of the act in the following way. Throwing out pre-clearance when it has worked and is continuing to work to stop discriminatory changes is like throwing away your umbrella in a rainstorm because you are not getting wet. I was a law student at the time the Shelby County decision came out, and I remember my voting rights professor saying he actually cried when he read the majority opinion and Justice Ginsburg's dissent. When I had the high honor of meeting Justice Ginsburg the following year after oral arguments, I was struck by her poise, patience, and incomparable ability to grasp and analyze complex issues. It is no wonder that as her end came near, she had a keen understanding of what her loss would mean for this country and how the Republican Senate majority would take advantage of her death without pause. Our elected representatives in Congress must respect Justice Ginsburg's last wishes and speak up at a time when our voices are being silenced. We cannot allow this administration to insult her legacy by selecting a justice who will undoubtedly undermine, upend, and unravel our hard-won civil and human rights for generations. With just 23 days until Election Day, we cannot permit Senate Republicans to recant their own 2016 promise or words when they impeded President Obama from making an appointment to the High Court. The American people should have a say in this appointment, and their view will be evident soon after casting their votes at the ballot box on and before November 3rd. Thank you very much to Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams and the Deputy Borough President on all of their staff for putting this event together and for honoring Justice Ginsburg at the soon-to-be Ruth Bader Ginsburg Municipal Building.
We have just been joined by the Vice President of Community and Political Organizing, Planned Parenthood of Greater New York Action Fund, and a good friend of ours, Ms. Pascal Bernard. Please come forward.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank the Borough President and Deputy Borough President for bringing us all here today. Today is an important day. It's actually National Coming Out Day. It's also International Day of the Girl. And it's fitting that we're here today as these two very important communities intersect to talk about the justice, because she was a living example. She was a warrior for women and girls. She was an advocate and ally for the LGBTQ+ communities. And we know what her fervent wish was. It was that the next president decide who her replacement would be. And why is that? It's because she understood what was in the balance, what was hanging in the balance. And we understand, and Senator Harris, you know, she talked about it in the debate. They are coming for our health care. They are coming for our civil rights. They are coming against the LGBTQ+ community. They are coming against reproductive health care. We know that the ACA is coming in front of the Supreme Court sometime soon. And we understand what the justices, particularly the conservative justices, have talked about. And so for those of you who have children, who are on your health care, particularly in this downturn in the economy, you need them to stay on your health care. For those people, unfortunately, and in New York City and in New York State, we've seen this, who've contacted COVID. COVID is now a pre-existing condition. What happens to them if they strike down the ACA? Congress can do this, you know, they can rush to try to get this justice in place, but they can't pass the HEROES Act. The Republicans won't come back to do that. The Republicans won't come back to make sure that our hospitals have the proper protective gear. They won't come back to make sure that teachers have the proper gear so they can teach. They won't come back to make sure states like New York have the money they need to ensure that citizens are safe, but they can come back and do this. Why is that? We know why. We know what's at stake. We know what the court is doing. And we've just heard from, Thomas and Alito. What did they say? They talked about marriage equality. Love is love. And so it's important that we pick up where Justice Ginsburg left off. We know in her dissent how powerful she was. We must pick up that mantle. We must be as powerful in our dissent. And so, again, we're happy to be here on behalf of Planned Parenthood of Greater New York Action Fund, and we know what we must do. We have to carry on her fight. Thank you.
So in keeping with the mindset of carrying the torch, carry on with the traditions established by our esteemed Justice Ginsburg, it's an honor for me to introduce to many of you and to present to even more of you our Brooklyn Borough President Eric L. Adams.
Thank you so much, Ingrid and the entire group that's here today. And I believe that the VP of Planned Parenthood really laid out the case. As we watch across America the shortening of the sports season due to COVID-19, at the conclusion, it would be just the end of a season. But the actions that would take place now by expediting and shortening the vetting process of the next judge on the Supreme Court won't impact a season, it will impact a lifetime. The respect that's needed to look at opinions, to go over documents and comments, to look at what actions we believe the next Supreme Court justice will take, should take the appropriate amount of vetting time that we all deserve in this country. And the accumulation of issues that this court is going to face, the diversity of how these issues will impact the entire country. And you heard them all, and you heard representatives from the various groups that have fought in the vineyards of ensuring that these issues are not taken lightly. LGBTQ+, you have looked at women's right to choose, healthcare, particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic, where so many people are going without adequate healthcare. What's going to happen around education and other important issues? This cannot be a short season. It must be a long, deliberative process where we can make the next decision, the right decision on putting on the Supreme Court appointee. And so I add the voice that Susan Lerner stated, and we all share. No nomination until after the election. This is a simple ask. This is a simple request. To do anything other than that would be sending the wrong message that political expediency is more important than what will happen in this country throughout several generations. And so to all of you, we were successful in spending our day here a few weeks ago to call for the renaming of the Municipal building after Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We add our voice again, and the people who are behind us, they are representative of the countless number of individuals in this country that are asking to hold off the nomination until after the election. It's imperative that the U.S. Senator and Congress join and use every tool available to them to make sure we are slow in action so that we don't impact what is going to happen in this country for the remaining of the generations to come. Many important issues are on the forefront. Taking our time to do this right and ensuring the next president that's elected will decide who's going to be the next Supreme Court Justice. And so again, I thank all of you for adding your voice and joining us today. Black, brown, all different economic status, all different lifestyles, all moving to the same direction, that we could have a country with the highest court in our land. The individual was decided based on a slow process of reviewing the credibility of ensuring that justice would be served for us all. Thank you very much.
So we thank you for joining us, and again, we ask the President of the United States and Congress to show a modicum of respect for the last wish of our esteemed Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. No nomination until after confirmation. So if you have any questions for anyone that's here, we'll take questions at this time. Thank you.